I'm going to tell you a story that most people wouldn't believe unless they saw it with their own eyes, and even then, they might still question it. This is not my story, it belongs to a woman named Amelia Carter. I met her years ago, but I didn't understand her strength until much later. What she did for nearly 2 decades, without recognition, without support, and without ever demanding credit, changed the life of a child, and exposed the truth of an entire family. But to understand the weight of that, you have to go back to a quiet night when everything began to fall apart behind closed doors. Amelia was 21 at the time, just stepping into adulthood with a plan most people would envy: graduate school, a steady path into teaching, and a life built on discipline and patience. She wasn't extraordinary in a loud way, she was extraordinary in the way people often overlook, the kind who show up, who fix things, who carry more than their share without complaint. That night, her phone rang at 2 a.m., and when she answered, her mother's voice wasn't emotional, it was controlled, almost rehearsed. "Come home," she said. "Now." When Amelia arrived, the house didn't feel like home, it felt like a place where something had already been decided. Her father stood silent, her mother sat at the table, and upstairs, her younger sister Lily Carter, just 17, was crying in a way that told you she was overwhelmed, not just afraid. Within minutes, Amelia understood. Lily had been hiding a reality she didn't know how to face. Months had passed in silence, fear had replaced honesty, and now the situation wasn't about understanding, it was about resolution. Not gentle resolution, controlled resolution. And like it often happens in families, the responsibility didn't go to the one who caused the problem, it went to the one who could handle it. Amelia. Her mother didn't ask, she suggested, guided, and then positioned it as the only reasonable option. There were no conversations about emotional support, no real discussion about long-term consequences. It was all framed around stability, reputation, and moving forward quickly. And then something small, but deeply symbolic, happened. Her mother handed her a folded yellow baby blanket. "This was yours," she said. And in that moment, Amelia understood without words, something was being passed to her, not just a child, but a responsibility that would rewrite her entire life. She didn't say yes immediately. But she didn't say no either. And sometimes, silence becomes a commitment. Responsibility often finds the one who doesn't run from it, even if they never asked for it. The weeks that followed were heavy. Amelia returned to her apartment, but her thoughts never left that house. She looked at her acceptance letter to graduate school more than once, imagining a life that now felt uncertain. Could she do both? Could she carry a future she had planned while raising a child she didn't expect? The answer came quietly, not in a moment of clarity, but in a series of small realizations. A child doesn't wait for you to be ready. A child needs stability now. When the baby, Ethan Carter, was born, the hospital room felt suspended in time. There was no celebration, no emotional gathering, no overwhelming joy. Just silence and responsibility. The nurse asked a simple question: who will take him home? Lily turned away, her face pressed against the pillow. Their mother stayed still. Their father remained quiet. And Amelia stepped forward. "I will." That moment didn't feel dramatic. It felt final. Like a door closing on one life and opening another. And from that second onward, everything changed. Being present in the right moment can define an entire lifetime. The first year nearly broke her. Ethan cried for hours at night, and Amelia learned quickly that love isn't always warm and comforting, it's exhausting, repetitive, and often invisible to everyone except the one giving it. She worked during the day, came home to responsibility at night, and slowly reshaped her entire world around a child who depended on her for everything. At 9, Ethan asked if he could call her Mom. And in that moment, something shifted, not legally, not biologically, but deeply. Because titles don't come from words, they come from lived reality. Amelia didn't correct him. She didn't hesitate. She simply accepted what had already been true for years. 6. A name becomes real when it reflects actions, not just roles. Meanwhile, life outside their home continued. Lily moved on: college, career, new environments, new opportunities. And while no one spoke openly about it, a quiet distance formed. Not from anger, but from absence. Years went by without meaningful connection. Occasional updates passed through family conversations, but nothing that reflected responsibility or involvement. And through all of it, Amelia never spoke negatively. She never tried to shape Ethan's feelings. She simply allowed him to grow with truth, not confusion. 7. Guiding a child doesn't mean controlling what they feel. It means giving them truth and letting them understand it in time. By the time Ethan reached his teenage years, his character spoke for itself. Disciplined, respectful, thoughtful. Not because life was easy, but because he had been raised with consistency. Amelia didn't give him everything, but she gave him what mattered. Time. Attention. Guidance. And those things built something stronger than comfort. They built character. 8. What children become is shaped more by consistency than by circumstance. And then, life began to circle back. Quietly at first. A message here, a mention there. The past doesn't disappear, it waits. And eventually, it returns, not to rewrite the story, but to reveal it. Now here's where the story turns. Not loudly, not suddenly, but in the way truth slowly rises until it can't be ignored anymore. As Ethan approached his final year of high school, something about him changed, not in behavior, but in awareness. He had always been observant, but now he was connecting things, understanding gaps, noticing silences that once felt normal. Amelia saw it too. The questions weren't frequent, but when they came, they carried weight. One evening, while sitting on the porch as the sun went down, Ethan asked, "Is there anything about my past that you haven't told me?" Amelia paused, not because she didn't want to answer, but because she knew timing mattered. And she had always promised herself one thing: when the truth came, it would come with clarity, not confusion. So that night, she told him everything. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just honestly. About the night she got the call, about the decision she made, about how his life began and how it became hers. She didn't blame anyone. She didn't paint herself as a hero. She simply told him the truth, the way it happened. And Ethan listened without interruption. When she finished, he didn't respond immediately. He just nodded and said, "Okay." But that "okay" carried understanding far deeper than most people would expect. 9. Truth, when given with calm and sincerity, builds understanding instead of resentment. Days passed, then weeks, and nothing seemed to change. Ethan didn't withdraw. He didn't react emotionally. He simply processed. And then one morning, while getting ready for school, he looked at Amelia and said something simple: "Nothing changes." That was it. No dramatic speech, no emotional breakdown, just clarity. Because for him, the truth didn't rewrite the past. It confirmed what he had already felt all along. 10. Real bonds are not shaken by truth, they are strengthened by it. But life had one more test waiting. About a month before graduation, Lily reached out. Not to Amelia, but directly to Ethan. The message was polite, carefully worded, almost distant in its tone. She said she had been thinking about him, that she wanted to reconnect, that she hoped it wasn't too late. Ethan showed Amelia the message. He didn't hide it. He didn't react strongly. He simply asked, "What do you think I should do?" And Amelia gave the only answer that truly mattered. What you choose should come from understanding, not pressure. She didn't guide his decision. She respected it. Because at that point, Ethan wasn't a child anymore, he was someone capable of making his own choices. 11. Respecting a child means trusting their ability to think, not controlling their decisions. Ethan replied with calm distance. Not rejection, not acceptance, just acknowledgement. And that was enough to open a door. But what came next, no one expected. Graduation day arrived with all the usual energy, families gathering, cameras ready, pride filling the air. Amelia sat quietly, just like she had at every school event before. No attention, no recognition, just presence. And then Lily arrived. Confident. Composed. Dressed like someone stepping into a moment she believed belonged to her. She wasn't alone. She brought someone with her, a man who clearly didn't know the full story, but believed he did. And with them, expectations. The kind that ignore time, effort, and reality. Amelia didn't react. She didn't confront. She simply stayed where she had always been, steady, calm, grounded. Because after 18 years, she didn't need to prove anything. 12. When your actions have been consistent, you don't need to defend your place, it already exists. The ceremony began, names were called, families applauded. And then Ethan's name was announced, not just as a graduate, but as the top student of his class. The room filled with applause as he walked to the stage. Amelia watched quietly, her hand folded, her expression calm, but inside, everything she had carried for years was present in that moment. Not pride alone, but relief, completion, and something deeper, peace. Then came the speech. Ethan stood at the podium, looked out at the audience, and paused, not out of fear, but out of intention. He had prepared words, but in that moment, he chose something else. Something real. He began simply, thanking his teachers, his classmates, and then he shifted. His voice didn't rise, but it deepened. He started speaking about responsibility, about quiet sacrifices, about the kind of support that doesn't get noticed because it's always there. And then he said something that changed everything. He said, "There's someone here today who never asked for recognition, but deserves it more than anyone I know." The room went silent. People leaned forward, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. He continued, describing a woman who gave up her plans, who stayed through every difficult moment, who never left when things were hardest. He didn't name her immediately, but everyone listening understood that this wasn't just a speech. This was truth being spoken publicly for the first time. And then he said her name. Amelia Carter. She didn't just raise me, he said. She chose me, every single day. And just like that, everything became clear. The room responded, not with noise, but with something deeper. Understanding. Recognition. Respect. Because people know the difference between performance and reality, and what they heard was real. Amelia didn't stand. She didn't react dramatically. She simply sat there, holding everything inside, because she had never needed an audience to validate what she had done. But in that moment, she didn't feel invisible anymore. 13. Recognition means the most when it comes without being asked for. After the ceremony, the outside lawn filled with conversations, reactions, quiet realizations. Lily approached Amelia, not with confidence this time, but uncertainty. And before she could speak, Ethan stepped forward. Not angrily. Not emotionally. Just clearly. He told her that relationships can begin, but they cannot replace the past. That respect must be built, not assumed. That presence matters more than intention. And that while he was open to knowing her, she could not take a place that had already been earned by someone else. No shouting. No argument. Just truth. The man who came with Lily, he didn't stay long. Not because of conflict, but because understanding changes perception. And once he saw the reality, he no longer saw the situation the same way. Because truth doesn't need explanation, it reveals itself. Lily didn't respond with anger. She didn't argue. Because for the first time, she understood what time had done. Not to her, but to everything around her. 14. Time doesn't erase responsibility, it reveals who carried it. And Amelia? She didn't say much at all. Because after 18 years, there was nothing left to explain. Her life had already spoken for her. Her actions had already defined her place. And her son, through his own understanding, had confirmed it. As they walked away from the crowd, back toward their car, there was no dramatic ending. No final confrontation. Just a quiet moment where Ethan looked at her and said, "Let's go home." And that word, home, meant everything it needed to. Final M0 RAL lessons, deep and clear. Being a parent is not about beginnings, it's about commitment. Children deserve honesty, stability, and consistent care. Those who raise, guide, and protect, earn their place through actions. You cannot return to a responsibility after years and expect it to remain unchanged. Respect is not claimed, it is built over time. Parents and children rights, values-based ending. A child has the right to be raised with care, stability, and truth. A parent has the responsibility to provide time, guidance, and protection. A child should respect those who truly raised them. A parent should never abandon responsibility expecting to reclaim it later without accountability. Final question, engagement. If someone is absent for years, do they still have the same place in your life, or does that place belong to the one who stayed?